When looking at an ordinary shipping container, one might think of a few things first off, like what were they carrying, where did they come from? But for the box office, the question for them was how can we transform these containers into an office space?
When it's the first of its kind, um, typically as an architect and a designer, you have a design, a client comes to you, you can look at precedent, you can look it up in a book, you can look at an example of how someone detailed something previously. Well, we weren't afforded that luxury with this particular project. So even though they've done this residentially before in other parts of the country, there's been really no example of commercial office space on a large scale like this.
With today's expanding world, building materials are getting more expensive and innovations for newer materials are getting more bizarre. Improving on energy efficiency with building materials makes a point to stand out from our society's ordinary and inspire more innovative designs. Nestled in the unsuspecting domain of the Olneyville Square in Providence, Rhode Island, the building of the box office was designed and stacked into today's largest commercial container building in the U.S. It lies planted solidly in the ground on 460 Harris Ave on which used to be the former Harris Lumberyard in the 1900s. Not only being the first of its kind, the box office required months of preparation. Stack Design took on the assembly feat and had to endure many miles of cutting and countless welds to endure build quality.
I've been welding on my own personally since I was about 10 years old when I started welding on a farm. From there, I've worked for 3 years as a teacher and studio monitor in Providence, where I would teach introductory welding, metal fabrication, torch cutting, and I would oversee the open studios. I was hired because the owner of the box office is actually the owner of the company that I work for, and he had recommended me. The experiences that I gained both personally through art projects and working on my Jeep enabled me to work in a very professional manner for the box office, both in terms of efficiency and quality. The box office was created using 35 shipping containers that were created throughout the world, ranging from China, Japan, Romania, the United States. Each of them contained different things. It's really a guess as to what they were used for. We did find some packing slips that included Hyundai cars. Throughout the country, because shipping is down, there's tons of shipping containers just sitting around in yards, and we actually got all of our containers in upstate Massachusetts.
So a lot of this construction happened off-site in Cranston, Rhode Island. So what happens is all of the door openings, all of the window openings, all of the window installations, all of the holes for where the columns go, all had to be done off-site. And then when they arrived, they all had to fit together.
The building is essentially two smaller buildings with two containers that act as a skywalk between the two. The first building actually went up in less than 1 day. The second day was devoted to creating the skywalk, and the third day was the remaining building and the overhead roof.
So right off the bat, one of the things that we decided from a design standpoint and an energy efficiency standpoint was to set the criteria or the priorities for the particular project. In this case, we worked with 4 priorities. The first being envelope, needs to be well insulated. The second is systems, the type of heating and cooling and ventilation systems that we would have in the building. Third priority was at a comparable cost. And fourth was identity. Something that would create an identity and attract people that wanted to be in something new, something innovative. We were working on to bring in natural daylighting is using solar tubes in some of the first floor units. Those are basically skylights that are round, roughly around 14 inches, that have a mirror on the inside. So what happens is it pulls in the natural daylight from multiple sources, reflecting areas, and it reflects and refracts into a diffuser. And that diffuser acts like a typical light and actually uses natural daylight to light the space. So this particular space uses lightings with integrated sensors, daylight harvesting sensors. You'll probably see behind me some that are more intense than others. What's happening there is the photocell within each light is reading the natural daylight coming in and therefore reducing itself or giving itself more power to keep the foot candle level across the space evenly. The client for this project, who I mentioned earlier, is Peter Case, was a fantastic client, and he's also an architect, so I think he was able to wear both hats as an architect and designer and as the owner. So I really can't say that a lot of the things that we had planned weren't actually put into the project. When I look at the priorities that we established, envelope number 1, systems number 2, number 3 was comparable cost, and identity, I can say that we've met those particular priorities and actually have done better on some of those.